Korea's efforts for the 2030 World Expo bid kick into high gear as President Yoon Suk-yeol embarked on his trip to the BIE's General Assembly next week to add his own support. Heated debate continues among lawmakers on the second day of the government questioning over the Fukushima water discharge and key economic policies. Top nuclear envoys of South Korea and the U.S. call for concerted international action against North Korea's provocations. Also discussed were tougher measures to cut off funds funneled into the regime's nuclear and missile development. It's June 13th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Efforts to host the 2030 World Expo in the port city of Busan kick into high gear. This as President Yoon Suk-yeol takes his own chance to add support as he embarks on his trip to Paris, France next week, where bidders appeal their candidacy at the Bureau International des Expositions meeting. Joining him will be business moguls and K-pop stars. Our Kim Do-yeon begins our coverage.
On Tuesday, during a cabinet meeting, President Yoon Suk-yeol showed his determination to win over members of the Bureau International des Expositions as he announced that he himself will be heading to their General Assembly in Paris next week.
179개 회원국이 모두 참석하는 총회에서의 이번 프레젠테이션은 부산 엑스포가 가진 차별화된 비전을 보여주는 기회가 될 것입니다.
This was a widely expected move by the president as he has shown his willingness to back Busan's bid to host the World Expo 2030. The two-day General Assembly begins June 20th and is the fourth round of presentations from bidders, including Busan's rivals Italy and Saudi Arabia.
The president will also attend a reception hosted by the South Korea government on the second day of the General Assembly and meet with representatives and diplomats to promote Busan's candidacy.
In Paris, there will be a cross-sector efforts from South Koreans alongside President Yoon to strengthen Busan's candidacy. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle, business moguls such as Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong and K-pop icons including Psy will also make special appearances to showcase what Busan envisions for the Expo 2030. According to an official at the top office, the message will center on the world and South Korea coming together as one, since unless this happens, global battles such as defeating climate change cannot be won. And with Korean culture spreading so widely across the globe, South Korea can be the one country to unite the world. The official added that when the BIE inquiry missions took place in April, the representatives were especially impressed by Busan demonstrating close collaboration among citizens, the government, and the media to win the bid.
지금껏 2030년 부산 세계 박람회의 유치를 위해 정부와 민간, 중앙과 지방이 원팀이 되어 전방위적인 노력을 기울여 왔고 저 또한 해외 정상들을 만날 때마다 지지를 요청해 왔습니다.
The final decision will come out when the member states vote in November this year. According to an official at the top office, of the 179 member states of the BIE, the majority are yet to announce who they will support in the vote. And that means everything is up for grabs. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And the Korean president will be on another diplomatic mission next week during his time in France and then in Vietnam, holding summits with his counterparts for broader economic cooperation. Or Oh Soo-young tells us what to expect.
Embarking on a 6-day trip beginning next Monday, President Yoon Suk-yeol will set out to strengthen economic security cooperation with France and Vietnam. According to Yoon's office, the South Korean leader will hold a summit with President Emmanuel Macron next Tuesday during his trip to Paris to attend a presentation as part of the 2030 World Expo bidding process. Based on their shared universal values of freedom, human rights and rule of law, the two presidents will share their respective plans to collaborate and engage with the Indo-Pacific region, particularly with Seoul elected as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council Yoon and Macron will discuss global security issues, presumably North Korea's nuclear threat and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They will also talk business, with their bilateral trade volume having reached $13 billion last year.
While focusing on securing jobs for future generations and economic growth engines, the leaders will discuss ways to expand investment and deepen cooperation in the fields of economy, security, AI, space, high-tech, and future industries.
Yoon will take part in 3 business-related events: a dialogue with young people at the world's largest startup campus, Station F, an investment declaration ceremony, and a digital vision forum where he'll declare an initiative to establish new global digital norms. Next Thursday, Yoon begins his diplomatic schedule in Vietnam, his first official state trip to Southeast Asia since taking office. An official summit will take place on Friday with President Phu Van Thong, followed by separate meetings with the Vietnamese Prime Minister and National Assembly Chair before a state banquet. Accompanied by his biggest ever economic delegation of some 205 corporate leaders, including the chiefs of South Korea's biggest conglomerates Samsung, SK, LG, Hyundai, Lotte and Hana groups. Yoon will attend 4 key economic events, including a bilateral trade exposition, a luncheon and a forum for some 500 business people. Yoon will also hold a dialogue on expanding research collaboration with young people in digital sectors.
There are 3 key points. First, expanding service and infrastructure exports. Second, supporting solidarity between future generations. And third, strengthening digital leadership.
Yoon's diplomatic outreach comes at a time of geopolitical rivalry in the region and trade uncertainty, with South Korea looking to strengthen its economic and security partnerships in order to pursue its national interest as well as global peace and prosperity. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
On the second day of the Q&A session at South Korea's National Assembly, once again discussions were focused on Japan's plans to soon start discharging wastewater into the sea. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo says that the import ban on fishery products from Fukushima will stay in place until the Korean people can rest assured they are safe to consume. Our National Assembly correspondent Han Sung-woo has more.
Day 2, once again hanging over the National Assembly's questioning of top officials from the Yoon Suk-yeol administration was Japan's plans to start releasing radioactive wastewater from Fukushima into the Pacific Ocean this summer. In fact, just a few minutes into the session on Tuesday, the ruling People Power Party's Yoon Sang-yeon brought up the elephant in the room.
Any changes made to the import ban on fishery products from Fukushima?
To which Prime Minister Han Duck-soo answered with a definitive no.
No changes have been made and there won't be any moving forward either.
Despite his answer, the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea did not shy away from pressing on the issue of whether the water itself from the region, once treated, is truly safe to drink and thus harmless to marine life and the environment.
This wastewater from Fukushima, is it really clean? Can it be consumed?
We're all familiar with the purification plans and standards, aren't we? If everything meets those standards, I will drink it myself.
Also covered during Tuesday's interpellation session was this year's lack of tax revenue, which Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho told legislators should not be secured through extra tax law revisions, saying now is not the time considering the shaky economy. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Having met in Washington, top nuclear delegates representing the Yoon and Biden administrations have reaffirmed their commitment to stern actions against further provocations by Pyongyang. Also discussed were tougher measures to cut off funds used for the regime's weapons development. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung explains.
South Korea and the U.S. have warned North Korea that there is nothing it can gain through provocations. Seoul's top nuclear negotiator Kim Gun and Washington's special representative for North Korea Sung Kim met in Washington on Monday and underlined the importance of making Pyongyang understand that its provocative behavior will have consequences. The two allies agreed to strengthen efforts to cut off funds going into the North's nuclear and missile development programs. Kim Gun also highlighted that cooperation with the U.S. as well as Japan will advance as the three countries will simultaneously take seats at the UN Security Council next year. He added Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will make the utmost efforts to make sure that the UNSC no longer remains silent on the regime's provocations. The talks follow North Korea's failed launch of its spy satellite last month. And to counter a widely anticipated second launch by the regime, Sung Kim said the U.S. will respond alongside South Korea and Japan, potentially through sanctions and military action. At the same time, both sides also reiterated their commitment to engaging Pyongyang, saying they are willing to meet the North without preconditions, instead of passively waiting for the regime to return to dialogue. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The diplomatic spat continues between Seoul and Beijing, sparked by the Chinese ambassador in Seoul earlier. Now, watchers wonder where would this leave the Korea-China relationship. For more, here is our senior foreign affairs correspondent, Pyongyang.
The presidential office says that it's waiting for China to take appropriate measures in response to remarks made by the Chinese ambassador to South Korea, Shin Hae-min, who last week said that it would be wrong for Seoul to bet on Beijing's defeat, apparently criticizing Seoul's foreign policy leaning towards the U.S. A senior official from the top office said in a press briefing on Tuesday afternoon that South Korea has been saying it will form a healthy relationship with China, based on mutual respect and reciprocity. But the Chinese top envoy has made remarks that sound as if this policy is aimed at excluding a certain country. The official also added that a diplomat's role is to focus on boosting relations and abide by the Vienna Convention. Under Article 41 of the Vienna Convention, diplomats must respect the laws of the receiving state, and that it's also their duty not to interfere in the internal affairs of that state. President Yoon also reportedly told officials that the Chinese ambassador's recent move was diplomatically inappropriate. During a closed-door cabinet meeting, he also said that the South Korean public is displeased. The White House also weighed in, saying that South Korea is a sovereign, independent nation that has the right to make foreign policy decisions that it deems appropriate. The U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said it appears as if there was some sort of pressure tactic being used. Experts say that South Korea needs to take strong action, but at the same time, it should not turn its back on China.
We have to protest and take strong measures against Shin's diplomatic rude remarks. But separately, we also need to work under the table so that relations with China do not get worse. Either by sending a special envoy or through other channels, we should not let relations with China go downhill.
But both countries have yet to find a way to settle the situation, and it appears that the ongoing diplomatic conflict will not be resolved soon. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
The fourth round of minimum wage talks was held today, where representatives from management and labor discussed differentiating base pay according to business category. This has been one of the major issues since the minimum wage system was established in Korea in 1988. One official from the Korea Enterprises Federation urged that Korea should defer minimum wages based on sectors to ease the burden on small business owners, adding that 19 OECD countries currently apply this policy. However, labor representatives claim that such a system could worsen poverty for both workers and business owners, as they say. Dividing sectors was unrealistic due to a lack of data and could also result in social stigma due to their designation. The fifth round of talks is scheduled for Thursday. South Korean companies last year recorded the highest debt ratio in 8 years. Data from the Bank of Korea released on Tuesday shows the average debt ratio of about 30,000 domestic companies in 2022 was at 102.4%. This is the highest since 2014, in which the debt ratio stood at over 106%. The rate of operating profit of those firms also dropped 1.5 percentage points last year compared to the year before. According to experts, an increase in raw material prices led firms to borrow more funds from external sources. On the corporate front, U.S. media reports claim Washington may extend existing exemptions for Korean companies for U.S. export controls, permitting them to pursue their chip-making operations in China. Our Lee Seung-jae has the details.
While the United States is banning the export of semiconductor production equipment to China, it's been reported that it will extend the export control moratorium applied to South Korean companies. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal on Monday, U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security Alan Estevez met with officials from the Semiconductor Industry Association last week and announced that he would extend the suspension of U.S. semiconductor equipment export controls to South Korean and Taiwanese companies for the time being. If realized, the move will come after the U.S. Department of Commerce announced last October export controls that effectively prohibited U.S. companies from exporting semiconductor equipment to Chinese semiconductor manufacturers, while applying a one-year moratorium on Samsung and SK Hynix, two South Korean chipmakers which have factories in China. The report analyzed that the extension of the moratorium shows the difficulty of isolating China's high-tech industries in a highly connected world economy. It also warned that the latest decision would weaken U.S. export controls aimed at slowing China's technological progress. Concerns have been growing among U.S. lawmakers who believe that South Korean companies like Samsung and SK Hynix will replace Micron's market share in China after Beijing banned the sales of goods from the U.S. chipmaker. And with this, the Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. government is seeking to prepare separate standards for Korean companies producing semiconductors in China. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the South Korean chip industry has reportedly shown positive feedback in response to this, with the Biden administration planning to extend its current waiver in place for Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. Industry insiders have reportedly welcomed the easing of uncertainties. While the time frame for the waiver, originally due to expire this October, has not yet been released, the insiders said they viewed this as the first step in a positive direction for the Korean chip makers. They also commented on the necessity of continued upgrades for production equipment at plants in China producing advanced memory semiconductors. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is reportedly taking shape as the country continues to make advances against Russian troops in the south and east, according to the Ukrainian side. Our Yoon has more.
According to the Ukraine's deputy defense minister on Monday, the country's military forces successfully conducted counteroffensive operations over the weekend. Despite the small size of the villages that Ukraine has claimed to have recaptured from Russian occupation, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his nightly video address on the same day that progress is being made on the battlefield and necessary losses are being inflicted.
The battles are fierce, but our movement is underway, and that is crucial. The enemy's losses are exactly what we need, and although the weather these days is unfavourable, the rains complicate our task, nevertheless, the strength of our soldiers yields results.
Meanwhile, Russia has been using thermobaric rocket launchers to strike Ukraine, which had been stalling the counteroffensive. But according to a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, the Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine appears to have destroyed at least two of those TOS-1A launchers using the U.S.-supplied Paladin 155mm artillery system. Moscow has yet to officially acknowledge any Ukrainian advances, but Kyiv said on Monday it wrested away 7 villages spanning roughly 90 square kilometers since the weekend and made small gains near the eastern city of Bakhmut. The AP is reporting that Ukrainian forces are fighting house by house and meter by meter, pointing to how difficult the battle will be for Ukrainian units. Russia has superiority in terms of men, ammunition, and air power, but some Western military analysts say Ukraine is attempting an extraordinarily difficult tactical operation and that it was too early to draw conclusions. They added that results of the initial assault may be showing that Ukraine is testing Russian defenses and should not be overinterpreted. 이은진, Arirang News.
With concerns growing that artificial intelligence can become uncontrollable, the United Nations chief has called for the creation of an international AI watchdog body that would be similar to the IAEA. Our Chung Eun-ju tells us more.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has backed a proposal by some artificial intelligence executives for the creation of an international AI watchdog body. The UN chief said at a news conference on Monday that he plans to appoint a scientific advisory board in a few days and an advisory board on artificial intelligence in September to regularly review AI governance arrangements and offer recommendations on how they can align with human rights, the rule of law, and the common good. He also said he would react favorably to a new UN agency on artificial intelligence and suggested the International Atomic Energy Agency as a model, which is knowledge-based and has some regulatory powers. Guterres said he plans to gather a lot of opinions on the just-released principles for the UN Code of Conduct for Information Integrity on Digital Platforms, which he will issue before next year's UN Summit of the Future.
Alarm bells over the latest form of artificial intelligence, generative AI, are deafening. And they are loudest from the developers who designed it. We must take those warnings seriously.
Generative AI technology that can create authoritative prose from text prompts has captivated the public since ChatGPT was launched 6 months ago. Concerns over AI, however, have been growing over its ability to create deepfake pictures and other misinformation. Guterres added a model based on IAEA could be very interesting, but noted that only member states can create it, not the Secretariat of the United Nations. The Vienna-based IAEA was created in 1957 and promotes the safe, secure, and peaceful use of nuclear technologies while watching for possible violations of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It has 176 member states. Meanwhile, ChatGPT's creator OpenAI said last month that a body like the IAEA could inspect systems, test for compliance with safety standards, and place restrictions on degrees of deployment and levels of security. Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
South Korea will be under the grip of early summer-like conditions for the next few days. Maximum temperatures will be hiking up to 27 degrees Celsius tomorrow. Keep in mind that scattered outbreaks of rainfall will be widespread as well. This is due to the warm air on the ground clashing with the cold winds, causing unstable atmospheric conditions. The combination of daytime heat and rain will make conditions feel stuffy at times. As for the amount of rainfall, inland regions apart from the south coast will see occasional showers of 5 to 60 millimeters. The intensity of rainfall may vary depending on the region. Local downpours of 30 millimeters per hour are possible, and some areas may even see thunder and lightning. Along with spotty showers, violent winds are the forecast for inland regions. Gusty winds of up to 20 meters per second are in store. Please secure any items that could get blown away. For tomorrow, Seoul and Daegu will be starting off at 18 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 27, Gwangju 28, Busan and Tues will be topping out at 26 degrees. And for this weekend, sweltering conditions are back in the forecast with highs of 30 degrees. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.